Oh yeah, Anatomy Tuesday Nation. It's core week, the sexiest muscle on the body. Oh yeah, we're gonna dive in. Mark's got us.
Nice. All right, talking about the core this week. Huge week, super important. The core, just as a human athlete, we need to be strong. We need to be sturdy. So let's dive into some anatomy. Looking at the musculature, covering the core muscles we haven't hit yet. So we talked about the erector spinae, the paraspinals, the lats. Now we're looking at the front of the core. So we're talking about the rectus abdominis, the transverse abdominis, and the internal and external obliques. So just kind of as a whole, looking at those obliques, they run from our hip up to our ribs, connect the torso to the pelvis. Those rectus abdominis facing this way, coming down, they're going to originate actually on the pubis and come up to the ribs and the chest. And then we have the transverse abdominis coming across this way, going to originate on the ribs, this thoracolumbar fascia, and come around to that linea alba in the front of our abdominals. So functions of the abs, we're looking at a couple different movements, kind of as a whole. The abdominals can bring us into flexion, so trunk flexion, rotation, and lateral flexion. And they're really, really important for bracing and stabilizing our spine. This is going to be a huge theme this week, especially in athletics, and also super important in transmitting forces from our upper and lower extremities, displacing those forces, transferring the power so we can do all of our movements. Let's dive in.
Good, so after Mark just got done assaulting me with the ball and explaining the nerdy stuff of anatomy about this core, why as an athlete or why as a performer should we really care about this core? So we're going to cover three main things: breathing, bracing, and the transfer of force from the upper body to the lower body. We're going to start off with the most important part, and that's breathing. We do it 24/7 all the time, and a lot of us don't do it very efficiently. A lot of us are very chest breathers. We're breathing right up here and our chest is expanding before our belly. So we want to focus on diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing from this core, allowing our belly to expand, allowing those obliques to expand, and allowing that lower back to fill with air, and then the chest rising. It's a full body breath. It's not just breathing through that chest. So that's the first thing we want to focus on. Second thing we want to focus on is bracing. The most important part of this core is stabilizing and protecting that spine through movements. So one thing we can focus on, this is a little Kelly Starrett trick here, is keeping our brace here with this focus, one hand on the sternum, one hand on our belly, and this is just locking us into a good position so we're not overextended right here. So we want to start in this position, making sure these two hands are in a straight line, extending out. Once we're in that position, this is where we want to fill that belly with air and pressing out with those obliques, pressing out with that stomach, pressing out with that lower back. And if we're going to get punched, it's going to be rock solid in here. We don't really want to suck in there. We want to press out, keeping everything locked in and tight. Finally, the third part that we're going to cover is the transfer of forces from the upper body to the lower body. This goes back to the oblique sling theory of the forces have to be transferred somewhere from the upper body to the lower body or the lower body to upper body, and what it crosses is this core. So it's going to cross from the upper body right hand to that left hip, and everything's going to transfer rotationally through that core. If our core isn't solid, we're going to bleed force through that core, and it's going to come up as deficiencies in our movements. And a lot of people will try to attack those through mobility or strength, and a lot of times it's just our core not being where it needs to be. Good, so now we know the function and anatomy of the core, and why as an athlete we should really care about it. Mark's going to dive into about possible injuries that this core can lead to.
Yeah, so a big theme Austin was talking about was that bracing and creating that midline stabilization through breath and through creating that intra-abdominal pressure. That's going to be really key. We don't see a lot of injuries to the actual musculature of the abdominal wall. You know, it's pretty rare that we're going to have a strain or a tear, but obviously possible. But really when we talk about injuries, we're looking at not being strong enough, not creating that base, and not creating enough tension with our abs, obliques, and those posterior muscles. So if we can't create a strong brace, we're putting ourselves at a lot of risk of, low back injuries, not being stable. So in any lifts, deadlifts, squats, if we can't create that brace and create that tension, we're putting ourselves at a really big risk of injuring, low back and having to compensate with other musculature. Same with in dynamic movements. So if let's say we're talking about a baseball swing, and your trunk is not strong enough to transmit those forces, coming from your hips in a swing, that's really you're gonna compensate elsewhere, and you're gonna have pain patterns and injuries throughout the rest of the chain.
So the part in the video that you guys all came to watch, and that's the answer: how do we get a sexy, Instagram-worthy six-pack? Mark, how do we do it?
Yep, so the quick answer here is just, it starts in the kitchen, mostly diet, right? So you can go to the gym, you can hammer out 500 sit-ups, you can do all your Instagram fit model ab exercises, but you're not gonna have that visible, nice six-pack that you're looking for if you're fueling your body with shit food and fast food. So the key is to, make your own food, good, healthy, whole foods, good quality protein, fruits and veggies, healthy fats, all that kind of stuff. It's gonna start in the kitchen. And when you have that aspect, then you can get into the gym, you can do good functional movements that Austin's gonna dive into right now.
Yeah, so now we're diving into good functional movements, and we're gonna go back to the main aspect of the core, and that's to stabilize the spine, stabilize the core, the central region of our body, while extremities are moving. So what are some exercises that we can do to dive in on that? Well, number one, athletic movements are gonna be your number one core exercise. Sprinting, jumping, doing any sort of sports, that's gonna be a lot more rotation around while your core is staying the same. When you're sprinting, a lot more force is going through that core than you think. So those are gonna be your number one. Second, thing we wanna cover is no belts when we're doing heavy compound lifting. That's gonna allow us to use that core, stabilize everything, and not really rely upon everything. That's how you're gonna get that thick, dense core rather than that Instagram washboard core. Now we're gonna cover a couple specific exercises that we can do to really strengthen a core after those two things. Again, those two things need to be present in your program, otherwise these little things aren't gonna be a huge deal. So Mark's gonna show us an oblique ABC here. And what we're seeing here is he's setting his core. Everything's tight here. This is staying the same, not moving, while the rest of his body is. So his upper body is moving here through range of motion while his core has to stabilize through. Mark's making these look easy, but this is a brutal exercise. Hit 2 sets each side, A to Z, your core is gonna be on fire.
J-K-L.
Boom! Next thing we got stir the pots here. So Mark's gonna come in here, we're gonna squeeze these glutes, keep this core tight, and again, we're moving our upper body while the core is staying still right here. Stabilizing the spine while we have movement through. This is another brutally effective exercise that when you're done with, is gonna feel like knives are in your core. Good, so we ended all of our videos with a mobility exercise, a take-home stretch, and things that you guys can do to feel better at home. Like we mentioned earlier in the exercises part, that the most important part, that thing that you can do for your core, the most active your core is gonna be, is in a lot of sprinting, a lot of athletic movements, a lot of heavy compound lifts. So if you're performing a lot of these, if you're an athlete, a collegiate athlete that's doing these every single day, your core is gonna be very tight, it's gonna be very stuck. When was the last time that you really took care of your core and mobility and any stretch? Probably never. So Mark's gonna show us one of the main things that we can do for our core here, and this is called gut smashing. I think it's Jill Miller that is the one that came up with this, but we're putting a nice soft ball in here. Mark's gonna press against this ball with his core as hard as he can, and then he's gonna relax and let that ball sink all the way down. And all we're doing is just working out of some of that tight stuff in the core, some of that fascia in the core, and being able to spend some time here. This is a really good one to do right before bed to really calm us down, bring us back into the relaxed state. And if it feels like you're about to puke, you're probably doing it right. Payback, baby.
All right, guys.
Yeah, payback.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys learned something from this video. Yep. If you like this video, check out some more. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a like. Follow us on Instagram. All good things. Anatomy Tuesday. Woo!